Hello and welcome to Leaving Nothing Undared, a podcast from Oblate School of Theology's Department of Continuing Education. My name is Antonio Frietze, your host, and I'm excited because Oblate School of Theology is committed to fostering opportunities for people to deepen their relationship with God, with one another, and their engagement with the world through faith. In that spirit, we've developed a new opportunity for people seeking that deepening of their relationship with God and with others. This opportunity is Gathering Wisdom Group Spiritual Direction, led by Rosalyn Collier. Now, spiritual direction is a sacred space where we can hear the voice of God, where we can see God's face in others, and we can be attentive to the well springs of wisdom bubbling up within us. To that end, we're going to hear from Rosalyn today about what drew her to spiritual direction, the moments and people in her life that helped her recognize this calling from God. We're also going to hear about what participants might expect from this experience of group spiritual direction together, and the opportunities for growth and renewal when we come together with God. Thank you so much, and let's dive in. Rosalyn Collier, thank you for coming back to the podcast. We're so excited to have you.
Well, thank you, Antonio. I'm delighted to be here this afternoon.
Absolutely. So we're very much excited for the upcoming series, Gathering Wisdom Group Spiritual Direction. But as we do in these conversations, we want to give folks an opportunity to get to know their facilitator better, their leader better. So I'd really love it if we started this conversation hearing a bit about your story. Particularly what drew you to spiritual direction. Was there a moment or a person that really inspired you or made clear that call in your life?
You know, I was thinking about that in preparation for this afternoon's conversation, and I remembered vividly. We had been living in the DC area. We went through Cursillo, and then we moved down to Miami, and we were involved partly in Cursillo and partly in an Emmaus walk retreat down in Miami. And when we moved back to Maryland, this was in 1986. Along about 1987, I had led a retreat in our parish. The pastor was very welcoming and said, "Oh, I think that'd be great." I went in to talk to him about it, thinking he wasn't going to think it was a great idea. And he said, "Well, all I need from you is, what do you need for me to do?" And I said, "Well, I need the names of some women and, whatever." And he jotted something down and handed it to me, and we were off and running. So we had a retreat. And I don't know, maybe 6 months later, there was a woman who came up to me after Mass at St. John the Baptist, and she said, "Rosalyn, I really enjoyed that retreat, and I didn't remember her. I have to be honest, I didn't remember her at all from the retreat. There were a lot of women on the retreat." She said, I think you'd really enjoy the Shalem Spiritual Formation Program." And we're coming out of Mass, we're walking out of Mass, and I said, "You mean like shalom, like peace?" She said, "Yeah, it's derived from that, but it's called Shalem, E-M at the end, and they do spiritual formation. It's down at Woodley Circle down in Washington, D.C. And so I went to work the next day on Monday, and during my lunch hour, I took a phone book and I looked up Shalem Spiritual Formation Program, and I spoke directly to Tilden Edwards, who answered the phone, who was the head of Shalem, and he invited me to a kind of meet and greet for people who were interested in a spiritual direction formation. Now, I have no idea who that woman was. Let's just say she was my angel that pushed me into it. And so I took off from work and I went for, I think it was like from 9 to 3 or something like that in downtown DC. And there were all sorts of ordained clergy from all different Christian faith traditions there. I think I was the only Catholic, might have been. And so Tilden Edwards came up to me and said, I think I think you might be really interested in the spiritual direction program. I said, yeah, but I'm Catholic, so I'm not ordained. So there goes that. He said, no, there doesn't go that. He said, I think that might be something that really would not only interest you, but would be of a benefit to your faith community. And so the thing didn't start for another year. So half of that year, my husband and I signed up for a meditation course through Shalem. And I would get off from work, pick up a hamburger, pick up my husband at Drug Enforcement Administration headquarters in Pentagon City, and we'd eat the hamburger in the car on our way to the meditation program. and and so then I signed up for the 2-year spiritual direction course, and I still had really I knew what Shalem was doing. I thought this is a nice local program. So my first evening, and it turned out that they had to move the spiritual direction program from downtown DC out to the suburbs. And as luck would have it, they moved it to Piney Branch Road and New Hampshire Avenue. I lived about 2 miles from where I had to be every other week. I would take off the afternoon from work once a month, and then we had evening things. And so it was like God was saying, look, here it is, and here you are. And so the first night that I went there were probably, I'd say, 45 people. Again, I was the only still Catholic. A lot of people had been raised Catholic, but now were different faith traditions. They were from Philadelphia, they were from Delaware, they were from West Virginia, Virginia. And I thought, I can't believe that I'm only 2 miles from this place, and people are coming from, well, by Texas standards, not so far, but a good 4 or 5 hour drive, and spending the night and participating in this program. So I went through that program for 2 years. And then we moved back overseas when I graduated in 1989. In 1990, we moved back overseas. And so I was kind of, in some ways, taken out of it, but in some ways, I think it had a chance to sort of deepen in my own spiritual practices. So when we got back from overseas, we were back in Washington, that area. My father passed away, and this was 1994, he died, and my mother was alone. So I moved back to San Antonio to be with her because Jim was traveling all the time for work. And so I started with a spiritual direction supervision group here that one of the Brigidine sister, Andrea, who's gone back to Ireland now, had. And she had also gone through the Shalom program, so she was very happy we had a group of people. So that book, Accidental Tourist, Accidental Spiritual Director. What can I say? I had my plans because I was a French teacher and an ESL teacher, and I was, doing fine. But God had other plans for me. So that was
Wow.
how I got into spiritual direction.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's an incredible story, so rich and already brings forth some of the themes that I was hoping we would get to in this discussion. One of the things that really strikes me as beautiful and very parallel to the experience of so many folks at Oblate is that experience of finding a community in your backyard, not knowing that it was there, right? And coming to witness that folks from all over are attracted to this spiritual nourishment that they get there. And in my experience, that's a very common reality of folks who come to know and love OST. So that's a beautiful parallel right there.
That's a
The other
great
thing,
parallel. Thank you, Antonio. That's really great.
yeah, and then the other thing is, you point to all these figures on your journey who prompted you or goaded you or said, there it not is, right? I think was what you're saying, right? That's not that. There's more to this journey than you might see, and that really beautifully illustrates why and how group spiritual direction or spiritual direction is not something that we engage in alone, right? All the time. It's a highly individualistic experience, right? It's unique to you and your relationship to God, but faith and community play a big role in what spiritual direction is and how it can bear fruit in our lives. So, can you share a little bit more about how that experience has shaped your understanding of faith and community and the role it plays in your spiritual practice?
It's part of it is an accountability role, um, that I have directees who are coming, and my preparation is always to have a meditation time before I meet with clients, because I feel like if I'm all scattered, they'll feel that. They'll know that. The other part of it is, and I'm very aware, because now I've been doing this since about 94, I'm very aware of I'm not in control of all of this
Mm.
at all. I can be there. I can provide the listening space. And as I was thinking about things that kind of bring me to an epiphany, I had a directee, I think just either last week or the week before, and she came in and has a lot of stuff going on in her life. We all do. And she started to sort of go down the list of how these things were connected. Because one of the things that I always talk about with my directees is connect the dots. When I was a kid, I loved those dot to dot books, letters, numbers, dot to dot, whatever. And I was always amazed that my older sister or friend would walk by and say, "Well, that's a horse." And I'd say, "Well, how do you know that? I haven't finished connecting the dots. I couldn't see the forest for the trees. I'm there. And I think in my life, especially over the last couple of years, I realize, like that story I just told you, who was that lady that came up to me after Mass? And how did she give me that information? And why, start connecting the dots of my own life and how important that is. So, in being a director for 30 years or whatever, I am realizing that, like the constellations up in the sky, we didn't make those dots. We didn't make those stars. God made those stars. And sometimes I only see them individually, unconnected. But let me tell you, once you start that connecting, there's nothing that doesn't connect anymore in my life. And it's the mystery of that. But back to this lady who came in, and she was telling me about, how she had connected the dots of something that had happened. And I said, "Wow," I said, "you've really been focused on that. You have discernment." She said, "I never even see it until I come in here, and then it's like, oh my gosh, there they are." And she said, "And then I can tell you." And I think it's, Antonio, I've been giving some thought to that, and I think it is when you prepare a space. Remember that old baseball movie, "If you build it, they will come," Field of Dreams. Yeah, Kevin Costner. It's sort of like, if you build a spiritual direction place or a group spiritual direction place, that's a place, kind of an oasis from all the stuff that's going on in our families, in our country, in our world. But there's a space there where we are not only given permission, but we're set a banquet of spiritual gifts that somehow elude us when we're not paying attention. So I would say that I've learned so much from people. Oh my gosh. And realize there's a dicho in Spanish, cada cabeza es un otro mundo. Man, is that true? Every head is another world. You look at somebody at the HEB grocery store, you look at somebody at church, or you can't imagine what they're going through. You can't imagine their life. But then when they're able to come in and just give you a little piece of what they're going through. Sometimes it's joyful, sometimes it's sorrowful. It gives you a whole different picture of who that person is. So, did that answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it really delved into one, the beautiful relationship that you as a spiritual director can have with folks who are engaged in this process. And I really loved that image of you as a child connecting the dots on a page, and this image of the stars in the sky and in the night sky as this assemblage of dots that we connect, and how that reflects our lives, right? Connecting the dots that we notice in our lives, those key moments and relationships, and even points of pain sometimes that don't make sense on their own.
No, they don't make
But
sense on their own. You're right.
right. Yeah, but especially having someone
Mhm.
who walks alongside us as we come to recognize how those points are related to one another, so critical for us to understand where we fit in the universe, right? Where we fit in God's creation. So I think our audience, like myself in this conversation, is our appetites are so whet to hear about this upcoming offering. So we've alluded to this already, but gathering wisdom is going to be a context of group spiritual direction,
Mhm.
right? And this might be distinct from what folks have experienced in the past with one-on-one spiritual direction. And some folks may have no experience with spiritual direction. So I
Absolutely.
think it'd be helpful for us to get an idea of what participants can expect in this journey together.
Okay. You said something, Antonio, that reminded me of a quote from Thomas Berry. And that quote just really touched me. I saw it, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. And he said, "We all suffer from spiritual autism." Now, I have a little, not little anymore, he's 26 years old, but I have a grandson who has autism. And, kids with autism and adults with autism are just, oh my, it's something. And when I read that quote by Thomas Berry, I thought, the spirituality, the gifts that we get from recognizing spirituality in our lives are all around us, but we can't see them. We're kind of like looking everywhere except right here. And that really has stuck with me. And one of the things I would say about the difference between, and they're not mutually exclusive, the difference between individual spiritual direction and group spiritual direction is a little bit like the difference between when I sit down to meditate by myself or when I sit down to meditate with 4 or 5 or 6 other people. Something about the quality of the energy, because it's a combining of energies in the group, changes the depth of my meditation. Uh, it's, well, I liken it to like in a classroom. People say, how can you teach French for all those years? Because in the classroom, your students are always all different. You used to be a teacher, I think, and your students are all different. So if they were learning from a tutor one-on-one, their experience of learning would be one thing. But learning with a group of 25 other people is very different. There's perspectives that come in, and as a teacher, you're just facilitating what's going on. You're not really controlling. You're for sure. You're sort of just helping things move in a positive direction. And the last thing I would say about your question is that after our 30 whatever years, I firmly believe that the writing of the Gospels by the evangelists did not end 2,000 years ago. I think that in spiritual direction, because people are talking about, and I have some people who say, well, this isn't real spiritual, but this is happening. It is spiritual. Anything in your life, your grandchildren, work, illness, whatever it is, it's the gospel according to Antonio. It's how are you living whatever it is you're going through right now, and recognizing that God is there with you, that you are holy ground, that you have that innate holiness, so that I feel like people want to, and it's the way our culture is. This is secular. This is spiritual. No, it's all a part of the same package. The incarnation didn't end with Jesus. I mean, we are all. I think the idea of the incarnation is that we all are holy ground. We are holy, sacred beings incarnated in this body with curly hair, with straight hair, whatever. It's how we have lived, and God made us this way. And I think um, my hope, prayer, wish for people who want to come to Gathering Wisdom is that they see themselves as holy, and that they see their lives as guided by God, and that they embrace all the ups and downs. And God knows we are going through a period in history that has a lot of ups and downs. So there's the microcosm of my little family, and there's the macrocosm of the world, including nature, including political, including economic. There's lots of fodder for the gospel, according to Rosalyn, the gospel according to Antonio. And where is God in all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that really stuck out for me from what you were mentioning, is that this is so deeply incarnational, as you were pointing out, right? I mean, this is sacramental, right? This act of gathering together in holiness, and taking what we the anointing that really happens by sharing forth that spirit together into the rest of our lives, and recognizing, as you point out, that there's no dimension of our lives that's meant to be left untouched by the experience of God, right? There's no dimension of ourselves that isn't in relationship to God, and we particularly experience that through one another, right? I think it's a powerful reminder for us that we're called to live out Christ in the world today. And we see that Christ, in encountering a time of tumult during his ministry, which was tumultuous not only for his personal individual experience, but he was in a cultural context that was undergoing tumult and uncertainty. And he gathered together a community, right? And he gathered in community. And we see the disciples in the Acts of the Apostles, right, maintain and deepen and strengthen that community as a means of navigating uncertainty, both spiritual, cultural, and social, together, right? And I think this group is a wonderful opportunity to live out that portion of our discipleship together. For folks that are hearing this and are saying, this feels attractive, but I still have some uncertainty or doubt. How would you respond to that, or make even a deeper invitation to somebody who's feeling that doubt and tension and uncertainty?
Well, first of all, I would say that people who um, have never experienced spiritual direction should not be at all intimidated, because there's no experience necessary except your life experience. That's the experience that we're looking for. And for people who maybe have been in spiritual direction or are currently in spiritual direction, who want to experience group energy, spiritual direction, it'll be an opportunity to see things beyond, to see, it's like all those 12-step groups, where the strength of it is that you see other people going through what you're going through. So you're not the only one going through these doubts. Where is God in all of this? What's happening? What's going on? I want to believe, the other thing, I guess, because I'm an old foreign language teacher, is that you'll find a group of people who speak your language. You don't have to translate an experience that you had. You can just tell it as you received it. Like the thing about the lady in church. I don't have to, I don't have to, who sort of put me on this path. I don't even know who she was, but I swear that somehow or other God orchestrated all of that. And I I think that a lot of times we have these unusual happenings in our life, but we don't ever dare tell anyone because they might think we're not so not so sane. And I had an experience one time of, it was my angel experience, but long story short, um, I was on this retreat, one of the retreats that we did up in Maryland. And because I wanted to talk about angels, there was a lot of kerfuffle in the team because that was old time Catholicism, and what do we, this isn't really where we want to be with people. And I thought, I took it to my spiritual director at Shalem. I was going through the program at the time. And I said, and we were in group spiritual direction at that time. And I said, I can change my topic. I don't have to talk about angels. And the lady who was the director of the group said, yeah, you can, Rosalind. She said, but how will you feel if you decide not to talk about that experience? Instantly, I knew I would regret it for the rest of my life. And so I decided I would go ahead and give my angel talk. And when I did, it was the last talk of the retreat, Sunday afternoon, right before Mass. When I did, 35 women exploded with their angel stories. I mean, it was like this explosion of experiences that nobody had ever dared to speak because they were afraid people would judge them or think they were crazy. And I felt like a bit, it's pretty dramatic, I felt a bit like it was Pentecost, All of a sudden, all this babbling, everybody could understand each other. We were all speaking the same language. And I hadn't connected that with Pentecost. That's another dot I just connected right now with you. But that's exactly how I remember it. It was a very painful experience because half of the team wasn't talking to me because I was giving this talk. And, there was all this judgment from the outside. But Rhoda, my spiritual director at Shalem, asked the right question. How are you going to feel if you don't do this? And, Antonio, the world we live in right now, I told you this when I went to pitch this gathering wisdom thing. We may be sometimes reticent to offer whatever seems to be bubbling up inside of us. But if we don't do it, who's going to do it? There is no Deus ex machina that's going to come from the clouds that's going to save this world. It's got to come through each one of us. And so getting in touch with that deeper place that each of us have, and not waiting until everything is all right and the situation is perfect. As you said, Jesus went through a lot of turmoil. The situation was not perfect. Everything was not smooth sailing. It was a precarious time. And I think, we are in a precarious time right now. And people are, I see it every, when I have directees come in, people are suffering. They're worried. They're anxious. It's in the air we breathe. There's a lot of anxiety and a lot of division. And my hope is that when people come to Oblate, when we come to Oblate, we have this experience, but I'm hoping that this will be a part of that they find that oasis. It's an oasis. It's a spiritual oasis that you're talking about. And I wanted to offer this to people as a place that they could come once a month for 2.5 hours and be together with people that speak the same language or no language. There's going to be a lot of silence in this. so that we can um, listen deeply, that we can listen with our heart, that leb shomea.
Wow. Thank you again. I mean, there's, I half of me wonders whether I encourage these programs as an excuse not to talk to you, you know, because this is, I mean, it's just incredible spiritual food, right, that we get from this conversation. And it's just a taste of what the opportunity that's being presented is for folks here. So I thank you for coming to Oblate with this, for offering this to the community. I know you have a deep love and connection to this community. So it's certainly, holding all things in common as that early community did, and bringing what gifts we have not only to the school, but to these experiences, right? So it's certainly our hope that folks part of the OST community, new to the OST community, curious about the OST community, this is an incredible introduction to the big beating heart of love that exists here. So thank you, Rosalyn, for inviting us into this sacred practice. And it's very clear that gathering wisdom is going to be an incredible space for reflection. And I'll let you offer again some final thoughts. Yeah.
My final thought is I want to allay people's fears about the burden of what they have to do for this class, for this offering. It's not a big, thick book that they're going to have to order, and it's not chapter by chapter by chapter for the 8 months that we're doing. You bring with you a blank journal that you're going to be using your journal during those 8 months in between monthly visits. The tome that we are using each month is a newsletter called Friends of Silence. And this newsletter is it gives us just a little bit of focus, like wisdom, nature, and it's a compilation of prayers and poems. And I've been subscribed to this for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And it's like a little mini spiritual direction moment when it comes in the mail. And you can also get it online. But it comes in my mailbox on the first of the month. And I decided that would be just the perfect little framework for people to plug into whatever, it's out of Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, whatever the Friends of Silence have come up with for that month. And I had to look it up, but that started in 1987 in Detroit, Michigan. And it's the word Friends of Silence is from a poem by T.S. Eliot. Ash Wednesday is the poem. And there's a line in there that says, "Is there enough silence for the word to be heard?" And so I'm saying that to the people who are considering coming to this, that we're going to try to balance more silence in not 2.5 hours of silence, but in, say, 15 minutes of silence, and then coming into a song, or 10 minutes of silence and coming into a journaling time. So there's going to be a lot of silence back and forth. And that, I think, is what helps to create that feeling of an oasis, because people are having a hard time these days tuning out the breaking news, the cliffhanger, how's it going to go? But I think that practice, and it's a discipline to have enough quiet inside of ourselves to offer that as a gift to the other. So I would say that that's kind of the secret sauce.
Well, thank you for sharing it with us. I'm so excited for this opportunity for folks to come and taste more of it, to come and share more of it, right? So thank you again, Rosalyn. It's going to be an incredible opportunity, and I thank you for your time today. It's always, always, always such a pleasure.
No, thank you, Antonio, for your time today. And I'll see you at church on Sunday.
Yeah. All right. See you then. For those of us interested in joining Gathering Wisdom Group Spiritual Direction, All of the sessions will occur in the Rock House here at Oblate School of Theology. They're in person and will take place the third Tuesday of every month from April to September of this year. The registration fee for all of the sessions together is a one-time payment of only $60 plus Eventbrite processing fees. You can find more information on our website, www.ost.edu, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Leaving Nothing Undared. If this conversation with Rosalyn resonated with you, I invite you personally to take that next step on this journey of deepening your relationship with God and with others. Nonetheless, please continue always seeking, growing, learning, and leaving nothing undared for the gospel. God bless you.